I wake up every morning with a mission. Thank the Lord for everything that I was given. Only give energy to positive things. Focus on the joy the day will bring. And now I'm looking better. Right now, I'm feeling better. Right now, I'm living better. Right now, so turn it up if you feel me right now. Right now, I'm looking better. Right now, I'm feeling better. Right now, I'm living better. Right now, so turn it up if you feel me right now. Right now.
Welcome to the Jazmyne Show.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Jazmyne Show. I am your host, Jazmyne Simmons, and we are grateful that you have joined us today. We are talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, a mental illness that is oftentimes overlooked, misdiagnosed, or not diagnosed at all, especially among African Americans and Hispanics. So today we want to bring more awareness and just talk about the different symptoms and the things that we experience. We are so fortunate today to have Dr. Yvette Lopez join us. She is an experienced person within this area because she has endured post-traumatic stress disorder, and we will talk about that a little bit later. For now, let's talk health and news and health in Hollywood. Recently, there were some reports regarding mental illness, which makes this subject so timely. According to the World Health Organization, over 450 million people across the globe suffer from mental illness, and approximately 350 million people are suffering from depression. And so that means that we need to talk about it more. Let's see what's going on and what are some things that we can do to prevent and to educate. In other health and news, in your coffee, what is it tied to? Is it possibly tied to genetics as far as your consumption and your frequency? According to Harvard Public Health School, researchers found that there are 6 genetic variants that could possibly speak as to why people consume coffee as frequently as they do or as little as they do, and why the impacts are as they are for different people. And according to the National Coffee Association, approximately 61% of the population consume coffee on a daily basis. NBC Nightly News aired a special regarding cancer possibly being linked to artificial turf. Amy Griffin, an associate head coach for University of Washington women's soccer team, stated that she could identify at least 30 kids who had suffered cancer after playing in and being affiliated on the soccer team and being exposed to artificial turf. A representative named Frank Pallone for New Jersey sent a letter asking that this be reviewed to see what studies can be done regarding artificial turf and the containment of it. Different issues for toxicity include inhalation, ingestion, as well as dermal contact. They're finding that this is an issue that is going under the radar, but they definitely want to do more regarding research. In health in Hollywood, last week we reported on Amanda Bynes and the different issues she's been facing with marijuana use and her mental illness. And a lot of her friends were saying, you know, hey, parents, please get involved because we're concerned something tragic is going to happen. Well, they have tried to step in, recently reported by TMZ, and she has fled New York City. She found out they were coming in to help her enter into a mental health facility, and she decided she didn't want any parts of that, according to TMZ. And so we are still hoping for the best for Amanda as well as for her family. And recently, Saturday Night Live lost a veteran. Jan Hooks passed away at the age of 57. According to TMZ, she was battling a really serious health illness. Some of her most recent work included 30 Rock. Coming up from the break, joining us will be our guest, Dr. Yvette Lopez, and we will be shedding light on post-traumatic stress disorder.
Now I'm looking better. Right now, I'm feeling better. Right now, I'm living better. Right now, so turn
it. Every day, our brave troops and their families stand up for us. For years, we've asked so much of so few.
Now we have a chance to serve these heroes.
To give time, offer comfort, or lend a hand.
To ease the burden on a military family.
Let's honor their service by volunteering ours.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're going to beat them and bust them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Yo, check out this chef, right? Right? That's so gay. That's really gay. Dude, look at those pants.
Please don't say that.
What?
Don't say that something is gay when you mean that something is dumb or stupid. It's insulting. It's like if I thought this pepper shaker was stupid and I said, man, this pepper shaker is so 16-year-old boy with a cheesy mustache. Just saying. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Now I'm looking better. Right now, I'm feeling better. Right now, I'm living better.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. Again, I am your host, Jazmyne Simmons, and today we are joined with Dr. Yvette Lopez, a professor in the Institute of Public Health at Florida A&M University. Yes, we love IPH. And she will be talking with us regarding post-traumatic stress disorder. So without further ado, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. You know, I wish you every success.
Thank you.
Yes.
And post-traumatic stress disorder is often overlooked, misdiagnosed, not diagnosed at all, especially among minorities, because we're used to being stressed. And like over the break, we were saying, you know, what is stress? Or am I too stressed? No, I'm okay. So we're going to talk about your experiences because, I mean, being an experienced person and experiencing it, you are the expert, honestly, at your experience. So for our viewers, can you share a little bit about your article in the Journal of Loss and Trauma?
Well, what happened was that I had lost my father, who had been ill for so long, for over 15 years with Alzheimer's disease. And the journey to where he finally passed was very long and arduous. And it was one that tested me severely with the experience of trauma. And it's something that I felt out of control. I couldn't sleep. And you know, when you can't sleep, you know, you can't renew, you can't, you know, your body's really at war when you cannot sleep. And so it was a long journey, you know, to take care of him as he died, because he didn't just die one day. It took months, you know, until he finally passed. But it was after that I experienced all the stress of having lost him, and all the things were in my mind, and I couldn't put them down.
And I was reading your article, and I mean, it was so detailed. I felt like I was right there every step of the way, from the weakest moments to the strongest moments. And a lot of times, when I was reading, I saw you mention that oftentimes being called, you're the baby, and then, but I'm the most financially stable, and the stresses of enduring that and carrying a whole nother role aside from just a caregiver. What impact did that have on you of carrying through those roles?
Well, it's because we all have one, right?
Right.
You're middle child, you're the oldest, you're whatever. Being the baby is usually associated with being the one that's taken care of. And in my case, it was the reverse. I ended up being the main care and support of my mother, who was the main caregiver. And so everybody kept saying, oh gosh, you know, this is happening to you, like it's abnormal. And I don't know if it's abnormal or not. I think at some point, whoever is more ready, you know, to take on the responsibility does, whether they're the baby of the family or the oldest. So.
And what made you keep track of everything through writing? What made you, even in such traumatic experience, what led you to write about it?
I'm a writer. I write. So I found myself in a situation where we couldn't really talk as much because we were together all the time, my mother and I and my sister, for a part of the journey. And how much more can you say about he's dying, he's not looking good, he's not breathing well, oh my gosh, now he's in the respirator. Oh my gosh, we have to suction his, his lungs. What more can you say? So I turned to writing and getting it out.
So you found that as a form of therapy for you during the time?
Most definitely. Never dreaming that I was gonna, share it, because it's very honest.
And that was my next question, because, you talk about even the moment where you have to go in and you have to identify your father.
Yes.
And in my head, I'm like, I could not imagine having to stand in those shoes and carry that. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, did you feel that was maybe the turning point of your traumatic experience? Like maybe that was the most impactful?
It was, because finally it was the period at the end of the sentence. He passed. And there he is. He's in the bag. He unzipped. I looked. And then, I was glad to do what I had to do, for my family, but that was the biggest trauma. Then whenever I would close my eyes, I could see him, in that state, when he had passed away. And, when you pass away from respiratory conditions, he looked very purple and very, he didn't look like himself at all. So that was the trauma that I think kept me up at night, that I would, in my sleep, I would see that.
And that's, for our viewers, those are symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And they labeled it, according to the National Institute of Health, as re-experiencing. Mm-hmm. So bad dreams, bad thoughts, flashbacks, just that frightening feeling, even though it's all over. It's just that consuming power that still holds on to you, and that's the difference of just being stressed or just experiencing something and it just really taking a toll on you.
Because at the time you have to act.
Right.
So you're acting. Your mind is busy on that. Once that's done, it's much like when soldiers come back,
right,
from war, and they act at the time, and then it's revisited in your mind over and over and over and over.
And your father was a soldier.
My father was a soldier. So, he taught us to soldier through life, suck it up, and move on, keep going.
And do you think that played a part in you being able to suck it up? Because when reading, it was like you would say, like I remember one part you mentioned, even though I just wanted to go to the restroom and just vomit it all out, and just, you sucked it up, and you went forth and did what you had to do, so.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the healthiest thing, but that was the way I was raised, so I have to take the good of how I was raised with the bad, and now I have to work through all of that and have strategies and techniques that I use for myself. The main one being breathing. I feel like I spend most of my life not breathing properly, not breathing deeply, not breathing consciously, just going like almost panting right, through the things, because we're just acting, taking action.
And
so.
I just want to know, what made you say, okay, I'm going to share this with the world? And for everyone, the article is entitled Farewell Amber Eyes. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was already just like, within itself, just the title. What made you share your story?
Well, actually, I had written all that, my journals, and people kept asking me, when someone passes, and it's Alzheimer's especially, people tend to share that because they call it the long goodbye. You've heard that, and I think Nancy Reagan quoted that. The long goodbye, meaning that the person is ill for so long, and they keep changing, worsening and worsening, I should say. So I did not see any voices of Latinas in the literature at all. I thought, gosh, I imagine how I would have benefited if I had read, someone's experiences. Although, everything is so personal. Mm-hmm. But still, to see the experience. So I thought, I'm going to write it. I'm going to put it out there and see what happens, never knowing that it was going to be helpful, to others as much as it has been.
Well, we thank you for sharing your story, and we're going to go to commercial break, but when we come back, we have more with our guest, Dr. Yvette Lopez.
Now I'm looking better, right now. I'm feeling better, right now. I'm living better, right now. So turn it.
Here we go. One big push. Big push. Congratulations. It's a teenager.
Don't even think about going to Kevin's.
It takes one powerful mother to have a teen. Learn how to keep yours safe and stay sane at drugfree.org.
There are heroes among us. They don't fly or bend steel or ride off into the sunset. They simply volunteer to look after someone else's health by providing comfort, lending a hand, or simply keeping us on track. Everyone's health needs a hero. Who will you look out for?
Find out how you can participate in improving our health. Visit iparticipate.org.
Now I'm looking better, right now. I'm feeling better, right now. I'm living better.
Welcome back. Joining us is Dr. Yvette Lopez, and we are talking post-traumatic stress disorder. And we were discussing some of the symptoms, like the bad dreams and the flashbacks. At the time you were experiencing those things, did you know that you were having symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder?
No, and Jazz, you know that my background and my bachelor degree is social work, and yet I did not identify it as such. In fact, I was annoyed with myself because finally, you know, he had gone, you know, and you know, so it was over. What is this hold that this experience had on me? So, yeah, so I wasn't jumping to, oh, geez, maybe I need help. It never even occurred to me, and it wasn't until my boss at the time, Dr. Linda Frank, she says to me, you know, Yvette, I wonder if you would benefit from some therapy. Just for closure. I was so offended. I'm like, what? She said, just closure, you know, you're a social worker. And I'm like, yeah, right. So
Brought you back.
But somehow that's for other people, not for us. I mean, that's caregivers.
Right.
Through and through, you know, all nursing, everybody.
Right.
You know, we look out for others, but not ourselves. And so I have to be honest, the only reason why I went is because she told me, she said, you know, I know this Latina therapist, and at the time, this was in Pittsburgh in the early 90s, I felt like I was the only Latina in Pittsburgh. So I went just for the kick of meeting another Latina, and it ended up, she was wonderful and helped me immensely. She has since passed. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting that you mentioned someone that you can culturally identify with, because I was reading over research, and it mentioned how as African Americans we experience post-traumatic stress disorder a lot, frequently, and then for Hispanics it was at a moderate rate, and for our Caucasian counterparts it was even less than African Americans and Hispanics. But among African Americans and Hispanics, we were the least likely to seek help. Mm-hmm. And one of the conclusions they had was access to counseling and cultural competency within counseling.
Yes.
And you mentioned, you know, that played a part. Do you think that made it easier with going through the process of opening up with someone about something you had experienced, being able to open up with someone that you can identify with?
Yes, I mean, I have to say that when you are of the same culture, you have sort of shorthand. You know, you don't have to explain everything, you know, how absurdly tight the Latino family is, you know, and which may seem anomalous, you know, to people that are not of the culture, you know what I mean? So it just made it for easier conversation when you need easier conversation because you're having a hard time just, you know,
just being,
yes. Yes, and so I would tell her all the things, and she made it feel as though she was not judging me. And the more she did that, the more I was able to deprogram, my experience, which is pretty much that you get caught in a loop, and you just cannot break it yourself, and you have to break it through talk therapy in my case, and that's what did it. But I would hear the beep, of the respirator in my sleep, and I would wake up, oh my God, is he okay? And my husband would grab me and say, he passed, honey, everything's okay. And I would again, it was just, I was in the grip of something that I couldn't break on my own. So I was so grateful that she helped me with that.
And I was going to mention, because I remember that as well. In your article, you mentioned your husband, Tom, and how helpful and supportive he was. Having a support system. I mean, it's so important from any illness, disorder. Having that support system, what do you think that contributed? How do you think that contributed to you?
Well, I feel like as though he also identified my need, to go for help first, and was trying to work it in, because he was trying to be sensitive,
right.
To hon, you're falling apart. It's not very sensitive. So I feel like he gave me room when I needed to just grieve. He wasn't trying to rush me through grieving or anything else, which I feel was part of it too, that I was I rushed through the grief.
Because you had to rush back to work, you mentioned finances and your job and all those kinds of things, the impact and the role that rushing back to life can have on you.
Yes, and feeling, and on him too, like, my gosh, we're behind on the bills. That's just not like us. But, we have to pay for all this care, so. Yeah, he's a keeper.
He's a keeper.
Yes.
And we'll say, hello, Tom.
Yes, hi.
What would be your advice to anyone who is currently experiencing a long traumatic event like you experienced? What would be some of your advice to them where they can kind of get a grip now before the end comes?
I feel like a preparation would be to do these exercises, which are breathing deep, holding it for 5, then releasing it slowly, because I know it sounds like, well, we all breathe, we're alive, but there's something about intentional breathing. If you can work up to meditation, that is fantastic for post-traumatic stress. Every day, it's like a preventive measure, I think, for anyone, frankly. Now that I do it, I'm like, how come I didn't do this before? How could I have survived without this? Yes, but so I mean, it's hot now. All the stars meditate, so maybe people will take on. I also think that watching the diet, because what happened to me was that I could not even think of cooking, the steps, chopping, all the stuff that you do for cooking. So I was relying on like really bad food, but very comforting food.
Comfort food.
Yes,
I remember
like
you mentioning
pastries and things that have no nutritional value. Yeah, some chewy, doughy. That was my go-to drug, frankly. So I gained a lot of weight. And that also doesn't help you with sleep,
Right.
So, so you have to watch those signs, because your body is actually telling you this, and you also become oversensitive at work.
Right. That's one of the other symptoms. Is like hyperarousal.
Yes. Somebody drops a pencil, you're like, that's not. Yeah. You need to look into all these things. And the sleep, the disturbances of sleep.
Right, because you didn't get any, when I was reading that, I'm like, during the process, after the process, it was like just running on fumes, literally, throughout the entire process.
Yes.
And I have a question that I can't wait to hear the answer.
Okay.
Where is Dr. Yvette Lopez today?
Where am I?
Mentally, your strength, where are you today?
I am great, because I have learned the mechanisms and the tools that I need to use. However, I'm going to tell you, and this goes for everyone that has PTSD, there are triggers. Like I was in a car accident, And I kept replaying this car accident in my mind. It must be something about who I am. I'm always replaying, these things in my mind, reliving them. So I had to go again. There's no shame in that. My God, if your foot hurts, you go to have it checked, right? So, but somehow in our cultures, we need to improve that.
Right. Mental health, we have to improve how we preserve our minds. And as you mentioned, and viewers, please take heed to this, because if, as she mentioned, if your leg was broken, if you broke your hand, if anything, we would go get that checked. The brain is the most important organ in our body. So if anything happens to that, trauma, stress, whatever, go get it checked, because the rest will not function properly. So.
And you're not fooling anyone.
Right.
You're close, the people close to you know, oh gosh, she's going through a lot.
Right.
And they don't know how to help. They want to help, but they don't know.
And sometimes they don't know what to say.
They don't know what to say.
Because I noticed in the article, it was like, why would you say that? Just take some time away. And so that's part of maybe like the breathing, is just like understanding that sometimes people want to help, but they just don't know what to say or how to say it.
Yes, everybody's mostly doing their best. Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to share with us this evening?
I would like to share that to go, and if you suspect it, go and take care of it. If you know someone that you see going through these challenges, to help them, support them, because if we don't take care of that, it can lead to worse things. It can lead to serious depression, heart problems, blood pressure spikes, and so really take care of it. Take care of you.
Thank you so much. And when we return from the break, we'll be giving you all a heads up on what we'll be talking about next week. Thank you, guys.
Now I'm looking better. Right now, I'm feeling better. Right now, I'm living better. Right now, so turn it up. Take my hand and start a brand new day. And together as one we'll start to see.
Bajo todo lo que somos, bajo todo lo que hacemos, todos somos seres humanos, conectados, interdependientes, unidos. Y cuando le tendemos la mano a uno, podemos influir en la condición de todos. Eso es lo que significa vivir unidos.
Now I'm looking better. Right now, I'm feeling better. Right now,
Welcome back. We really hope today's episode on post-traumatic stress disorder has shed some light on different symptoms, things to look for, as well as different ways to seek help. If you don't know where to go or how to do it, we'll have information at the end of this segment for you all. And don't be afraid to seek help. It's nothing wrong with it. Don't be ashamed of it. The stigma surrounding mental health, we have to end it. And it can start with you, it can start with myself, and all of us who have loved ones who may be experiencing it. Don't feel alone. There are support groups and there are people waiting to help. And as we stated, we'll have that information for you at the end of this segment. And for next week, we will leave that a surprise. To continue the conversation, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at The Jazmyne Show. You can also catch us on YouTube at The Jazmyne Show. And just hashtag TJS if you want to talk about any of the topics from health and news and health in Hollywood. You can use the hashtag TJSHNHH. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you, and we will see you next week.
I wake up every morning with a mission. Thank the Lord for everything that I was given.